Welcome, guys. Welcome to my new channel. And I'm basically an enterprise software consultant providing services in the MENA region to lots of companies in the US, many startups that I have scaled. And I'm here to share my knowledge with you guys and basically to tell you what to learn and what to not learn in 2022 as a software developer, where you are starting at your career, or maybe you are eager to learn something and become a good developer, but you don't know where to start, what to learn, and how the things work in the software industry right now. So I'm going to give you a complete overview of how the software industry is shaped right now, what you need to learn, what are the different roles, and exactly what would be the best. If you start learning right now, you can make money. So my plan is to get you into production within the next 3 months. So if you follow my path, I'm pretty sure you can land a good job, or maybe start developing something of your own. And I know that right now the software market has gone like way up as compared to the other industries. And the problem with the market right now is that there are lots of new things coming up that you guys want to learn, but there's a lot of confusion right now in between the junior developers that I have seen and among my students. And so I'm here to basically teach you exactly what you need to learn and what you don't need to learn. So let's start with something that this is some overview that I have created for you guys to basically understand what are the different paths, and which path which is the best thing that you must learn. So first thing first, boys, software fundamentals. So by fundamental, what I mean is, when you are now interested in learning software, you must start with the basics, the very basics of how your computer works. So for example, I have a Mac OS, so I'm running Chrome on this, right? So this is how the RAM works, how the memory works, and how your own operating system operates. For example, let's talk about BIOS, which you must know from Windows. So anything that comes above the BIOS is the Windows, and then above the Windows there are apps that we are running. So all of these consumed into the binary in terms of the binary programming language. And this is how things work. Like, you need to understand the hierarchy of how your hardware computer is architectured, what are the difference between the basic binary language and how everything is converted into machine language. So you need to learn all of these things in order to understand and get a grasp over what the computer is, how the hardware works, and how the systems operate in a computer. So these fundamentals are required that you can learn on the web. I'll share in some links for you to basically go through them, or you can follow my tutorial where I'm going to teach you everything from the very scratch and get you into production in next 3 months. So coming start, we have right now, most of you must have known that you can build mobile apps, web apps, or games, right? And the gaming industry, starting with the gaming industry, I would recommend, if you're interested in the game development, I would throw in some courses for you that you can proceed. So we have game development with C# or Java. So when I say these languages, and we are mostly going to focus on JavaScript fundamentals in terms of the basics and what is the best right now in the market. For example, if you want to become a mobile developer, you have two paths. Either you become a Flutter developer. I'm talking about 2022, so this video is specific and onwards from 2022, what is in the market and what is going to come. So we have Flutter, we have React Native, which are one of the best technologies. So there are some pros and cons. I would recommend you to go with Flutter. It's because Flutter right now provides you with more flexibility in terms of creating more, you can say, animated UIs and modern UI, and it's very fluid. So Flutter is your go ahead, and with Flutter you can create both Android, iOS, and even web right now. So Flutter is really hard, you should look into it. It's powered by Google, so it's something you need to consider. React Native has been the choice in terms of hybrid development, because with React Native you can create your mobile app, you can create your Android, and even React.js is the technology that React Native uses, which is the one of the leading and the hottest you can say the language or the framework that is being used in web development. So though React is not a framework, it's a library. So coming up to for web development, so you have the three paths that you can choose. There are more paths, but for now these are the basics. So normally I would recommend you to always go and start with the web development. Why? Because when you start developing your web apps, you would have the leverage to work on mobile and on cloud infrastructure in terms of the things that you need to learn and all across the board. So that's something I think you should start with. And for web development, you need to understand that all of your website, even this website that I'm using, whenever it has this is what we call a client. I am a client and I'm running this, and we have the backend. The backend is basically, you can say, where, for example, you went into a restaurant, and in the restaurant, the you are basically the client, and the server is basically the kitchen and the chefs and all those people who are making the things, and the waiter is the, you can say, the communicator between the backend and between the client and the server. So this is the way how the backend and the front end works. But normally backend involves working with databases, saving data, or making, you can say, your business logic can be saved in the backend. So coming up to the front end, so these two things are something. Start with one of these. You need to take a path first, and I would recommend first going to the front end, because you need to learn some basics: HTML, CSS, JavaScript in the front end. And when you are decided to go with the front end, you have the client side framework. Don't think about more, go with React.js. With the basics of the React.js, how React.js work, you can find tons of tutorials on the web. And the problem with React right now is that we have the functional approach and we have the old component approach. Definitely go with the functional approach, use React hooks, and I would recommend you this framework called the Next.js. This is awesome in terms of routing and in terms of SSR and all the things. It's gonna make your work very easy, guys. So always consider in 2022 Next.js for your projects, and start developing some apps with Next.js. You can find lots of tutorial, and this is where you are gonna start making something useful or something productive. When I say builders are like, you need to understand the concept of how your application is compiled with Webpacks or some other tool. Normally I would recommend going with the Webpacks, or even if I would say at the start you will not be able to look into it, because Next.js already provides you with its own Webpack. Coming to the other framework, Svelte is very hot right now. It's a new one in the market, and it is more like the basic is holding some approach there. So you need to look into Svelte, but I would recommend go with React. Vanilla.js, yeah, right now I would say definitely, if you want to consider with the basic JavaScript, definitely go with it. Vue.js is also very good and very close to the concepts are same as React and Angular. So Vue and React are more like, if you start learning one of these, you would understand how the other would work when you start developing things on Vue.js. So all of these are basically assigned to do the same task. So better to consider one of these for your development. Do not get involved in multiple when you are starting your career. So this is how you create a front-end app. You will have something, but now you need to save your data in somewhere, and you need to make some you can say, for example, login, authentication session, all of these complicated modules that you see in the app, which are not actually complicated. But let's see. On the backend skill, I would recommend you to go and understand how the architectures work. There are lots of architectures. I'm not going to discuss all of them, but I would recommend going with the microservices. At the start, go with the simple MVC, which doesn't involve much complexion, or you can also use a 3-layer architecture, which is my favorite for a single project. In terms of where you are a single developer or you want to bootstrap an MVP, 3-layer architecture is awesome. So backend, we have C Sharp, Java, the Node.js. So Node.js and React.js, they all are basically using JavaScript technology as a language, and the best part is Node.js provides you with a runtime environment, and you can scale Node.js very easily. It is one of the hottest languages frameworks right now, with JavaScript being used as a language. And the best thing is that you can use, since you are already working with the web with React as for JavaScript, so you can easily use Node.js, and which can give you a huge edge. So I would recommend going with Node.js instead of C Sharp or Java, because Node.js is much better than in terms of the future what future holds, because this is what is being used, guys. It's modular, it's scalable, and it's not single threaded. To be honest, it's you can make it multi-thread. So if this is something you would encounter when you start working on this, so go for Node.js. Coming to cloud infrastructure, so once you have your server running, you have developed your app, your database is set up, now you need to deploy these things somewhere, right, instead of your computer, in order to serve it to your customers. So for that, you need to understand the basics of deployment. For example, you deploy your applications to a server, and all of this is covered through in basically the whole group is called the cloud infrastructure. And cloud infrastructure also involves the DevOps also. You can segregate them, but I just put them here. Okay, for cloud infrastructure, start with the basics, that is like you deploying your applications on the cloud. For example, you need to deploy your backend code on the cloud, and for that you need to understand that how does the cloud work, how do you basically deploy your application to the cloud. And we have basically two big contenders in this market. There are lots of clouds that you can find, and also some private clouds are there. So I would say don't hang on them, because trust me, the market is basically very very saturated right now, and you have AWS and Azure taking over the most, and Amazon is basically the leading contender in this market for cloud based solutions, and Azure is also catching up. So yeah, and I would like you to learn, basically, instead of confusing yourself with different types of architectures and how to deploy them, you should know how the VMs work and all the basics. But I would say Kubernetes and serverless, these are the two approach that you need to learn. Kubernetes with Docker, so this is basically container orchestration, so you can also call it container orchestration. I know the word seems very complex, but it's very simple. So whenever you want to deploy your app in a scalable environment, so that it can automatically scale, always consider these two solutions: containerized or serverless. So container orchestration, we have Kubernetes is basically for deploying your images with Docker, and basically managing them and orchestrating them in such a way that it provides you a whole virtual environment where you do not need to basically rely on other tools. So it's all in one package. So you can use container orchestration, or you can use the very simple serverless deployment, which comes up with Lambda leading up the market. Also, Cloud Functions are also good for Azure. They both do the same job. So yeah, so you need to consider serverless containerization if you are working on cloud infrastructure. And coming to networking, for networking basics, IP subnets and web server, Nginx, Apache. You would basically go, when you started your career as a cloud infrastructure specialist or any of the DevOps, you would definitely get into how the networks work and how does the IP subnet DNS masking work. How do you basically set up these servers? For example, Nginx is the most approach, Apache is for PHP, but Nginx would be your go-to choice, boys. Okay, and in the last, I would like to also give you some overhead of IaaC. Yes, infrastructure as a service. IaaS, sorry, infrastructure as a service. So, infrastructure as a code. What I mean is, basically, you need to have a whole plan in your pocket of everything you're going to deploy, and Terraform is the guy and is the tool basically that you need to consider. It's very hot, and it's honestly it's gonna make your work very easy if you start using. I know the learning curve is very high in this, but once you understand all of these, this is gonna make your life easier. And we are gonna go through a whole course where I'm gonna cover each of these topics in detail. So we have CI/CD with Ansible, Jenkins, GitHub CI. I would consider Jenkins, but you can use all of these. They are basically cloud based, so yeah. And you also have the Coggle CI, which is a paid one, but it has its advantages. It's free to limit, but yeah. So, and coming up to something new that I'm going to basically teach you guys is the Web 3.0, and this is one of the hottest blockchain cryptos, it all NFT. So for Web3, I'm going to cover Solidity, which is going to be a whole-fledged course that I'm going to release, where you guys can understand and scale your application. But for that, I would recommend going through the path. So what I'm going to teach you in the coming up tutorials, that is going to be on my YouTube channel, or you can find it on moislim.com. And yeah, so the Sash Academy, all of these courses would be in detail, and I would be covering each of these technologies with real-time projects we're going to build, we're going to release, and I'm going to teach you more about software development, not just in terms of coding, in terms of how you use agile project management, how you use workflow tools for workflows, and how you can make your work easier, and in terms of how to basically solve different type of errors that you're gonna find. So yeah, so this is gonna be it, and we're gonna explore some basic SEO along with Git and Netlify for very, very fast deployment on the edge. So yeah, so stay tuned guys, subscribe, like my channel, and we're gonna share and we're gonna learn a lot of things together. So stay tuned. Thank you so much. Bye bye.